For over 2,000 years, one name has divided history, reshaped empires, and transformed billions of lives: Jesus Christ. But what if the story didn't end in the 1st century? From ancient manuscripts to modern-day discoveries, are there traces of his existence still hiding in plain sight? Join us as we uncover the evidence that refuses to fade with time. Number 10. The man who wasn't in the crowd. Bulgaria. Early 1990s. Shortly after Bulgaria's communist government collapsed in the early 1990s, something extraordinary was recorded in Sofia. A visiting university music group from America had travelled there to lead worship at a Christian gathering in a large concert hall. After years of enforced atheism, the church was filling again, and the atmosphere that night was electric with something more than revival. During the service, a blind woman in the audience began to cry out that she could see, naming colours, identifying objects, drawing those around her into open weeping. A team member filmed the whole service on a standard video camera. Nobody thought anything unusual had happened until they watched the tape back in America. In a slow pan across the crowd, row after row of packed faces, one figure stood completely still at the back of the hall. He was taller than those around him, dressed in plain white while everyone else wore ordinary clothing, and he had long hair and a beard that matched no one else in the room. The team went back to everyone they could reach: musicians, staff, local church members, and security. Not one person remembered seeing a man like that. No one could place him. They sent the tape to video analysts in the United States who examined it specifically for signs of editing, inserted imagery, or digital manipulation. The report came back. No clear evidence of tampering. The figure is simply there in the footage, standing still, looking toward the stage, higher than the heads around him, and then the camera moves on and he is never seen again. Skeptics have offered explanations: a statue, a tall stranger who slipped in and out unnoticed, a trick of light on an already emotional crowd. None of them has been proven. The tape has circulated for decades, and the question it raises has never been cleanly answered, because the man in white is still there, in every copy, standing absolutely still at the back of a hall full of strangers in a city that had just rediscovered it was allowed to believe. In Bulgaria, the figure appeared in a crowd of thousands, and no one noticed him. In Paris, millions of people were watching, and what appeared did so inside the most famous fire of the century.
Tonight, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris is completely engulfed by fire.
Number 9. Standing in the Fire, Notre Dame, Paris, 2019. April 15th, 2019. The roof of Notre Dame Cathedral is on fire, and the whole world is watching. 800 years of stone and timber are burning by the River Seine, while crowds on the banks weep openly, and camera crews from every country transmit the images live.
Again, just looking around and seeing people literally almost crying and in tears, that can show you how devastating this is.
The medieval spire collapses through the smoke at 9:52 in the evening, and the gasp from the street is audible in the footage. Firefighters work through the night. By morning, most of the interior is destroyed, but the stone walls are standing, and somehow the altar cross is untouched beneath the ash. A woman in Scotland, Leslie Rowan, is watching the coverage from home when she stops scrolling and stares at a specific image. In the centre of the orange and white flames pouring through the open side of the cathedral, there is a shape. She zooms in. The longer she looks, the more defined it becomes. A figure in a long robe, upright amid the fire, with what appears to be a head, shoulders, and arms slightly open to each side. To Leslie, it looks unmistakably like Jesus standing inside the burning cathedral, watching over it as it falls. She shares the image and asks people what they see. The response is immediate and enormous. Thousands write that they see the same thing. Many describe feeling an unexpected calm when they look at it, as if the fire, as destructive as it was, had not driven the sacred out. Others are unmoved, pointing to the brain's documented tendency to construct human faces from random shapes, a cognitive function called pareidolia that operates below conscious choice. Once someone says the word Jesus, the shape snaps into focus and cannot be unseen. Notre Dame reopened on December 7th and 8th, 2024 after 5 years of meticulous restoration. The altar cross, which survived the fire without explanation, has remained where it stood throughout the reconstruction. Whatever the shape in the flames was, it appeared at the moment when hundreds of millions of people felt something irreplaceable was being destroyed, and the timing alone is something that a photograph never fully escapes. The Notre Dame image appeared amid a moment of global grief as the cathedral burned. The next appearance came from the sky, over a crowd already praying and looking up, when the shape formed directly above them. Number 8. The Figure in the Clouds, Naga City, Philippines. Outside the Basilica Minor of Our Lady of Penafrancia in Naga City, a large crowd had gathered for an outdoor worship service on the evening before National Youth Day. The sky was clear and the sun was low, that particular hour when light turns horizontal and everything it touches looks slightly more than ordinary. People were still singing when someone looked up and pointed. A single white cloud was drifting above the basilica, but as more eyes turned upward, the cloud seemed to be doing something clouds do not ordinarily do, holding a shape. A tall shape with what looked like a head, long hair falling to the shoulders, a robed body, and one arm lifted toward the crowd below. Several people describe the posture as one of blessing. A woman zoomed in close enough for the figure to fill her screen, and you can hear the crowd around her, gasping, crying, calling to each other to look, dropping to their knees on the pavement. The video spread immediately across social media. In the comments section, people who had been carrying illness, financial collapse, and family fracture wrote that the image gave them something they had stopped being able to feel. Others questioned whether a cloud shaped like a figure should carry that kind of weight. Meteorologically speaking, the human brain is extraordinarily sensitive to body-shaped silhouettes. We are wired to detect them for survival, and clouds in the right light can produce near-perfect illusions. What separates this moment from a random cloud photograph is the setting. These were not strangers stumbling across an image on a screen. These were people who had travelled to that church on that evening to pray together, and the shape appeared directly above them while they were doing exactly that. Whether it was meteorology or a miracle, the crowd experienced it as an answer. In the Philippines, the shape appeared above a crowd of thousands praying outdoors. The next sighting happened inside a locked chapel in Mexico, in a moment no one was prepared for, and the camera captured every second. Number 7. The Eyes That Opened, Saltillo, Mexico. In a small chapel in Saltillo in northern Mexico, there is a carved wooden crucifix nearly life-size. The figure has dark hair, a crown of thorns, and eyelids that have always been closed. During a quiet prayer service, a man stood in front of that crucifix with a simple camera and began to record, not expecting anything, just documenting. The room was dim, candles were lit, soft music and prayers filled the space. For the first several seconds of the footage, nothing happens. Then the eyelids move. On the recording, the painted shut eyes of the carved figure appear to open slowly, rising to reveal what looks like irises looking outward, before gradually closing again. The moment lasts only a few seconds. The man filming does not appear to notice immediately. When he does, his camera hand visibly shakes. A well-known fact-checking organisation later analysed the clip and said it showed characteristics consistent with digital editing, though it acknowledged it could not definitively prove how it had been done. The local Catholic diocese in Saltillo reviewed the case and declined to open a formal miracle investigation, saying that a short online video was insufficient grounds. What makes this case linger is not just what the video appears to show, it is what it means to the people who walked into that chapel to pray and walked out believing something had looked back at them. The camera did not create that experience. It only recorded what was already happening in the room. In the Saltillo chapel, something appeared to move that had no reason to move. In California, something appeared to float that had no reason to be airborne. Number 6. The Floating Figure. California, 2019. In 2019, a man named Pablo was outside his home in California, a property near enough to an airport that he was accustomed to reading the sky, to knowing what planes, helicopters and drones looked like at various distances and altitudes. He looked up that afternoon and then stopped moving entirely. Something was in the sky that did not match any category he had. He grabbed his phone and started filming. The recording shows a shape high above the suburban roofline, moving across the sky at a slow, steady pace. It does not flash. It does not spin. It holds a consistent, upright posture, with a draped form and a slightly bowed head, and it moves with an even, controlled trajectory that a balloon in a crosswind would not maintain. Pablo narrates as he films, working through the alternatives out loud, too large for a standard drone, too still for a balloon, producing no engine sound at any point in the recording. When he shared the clip, the reaction split almost perfectly in two. Believers said the shape, the glow, and the silent movement all fit the profile of something no ordinary explanation could account for. Skeptics pointed to distance as the great equalizer. Objects high in the sky at uncertain distances can appear radically different from what they actually are, and a human-shaped balloon or a single-person drone could plausibly produce Pablo's footage under the right conditions. What neither side could deny was this: Pablo's description of what he felt in that moment, the freezing stillness, The involuntary certainty that something significant was happening is a response that appears in nearly every account on this list, regardless of nationality, faith, or camera quality. Something is consistently triggering that response. The explanations for what that something is have never converged. Pablo filmed something drifting alone above his neighborhood. On September 11 every year, something is photographed rising above the entire island of Manhattan, and one year, a photographer caught it in a frame he cannot explain. Number 5. A figure in the tribute light, New York City. Every year on the 11th of September, 2 columns of blue-white light rise from lower Manhattan into the night sky and stand in the place of the Twin Towers until dawn. On clear nights, those beams are visible from miles across the water in New Jersey. A man named Rich, a working photographer, went out to the Hoboken waterfront one anniversary night to document the memorial. He had done this kind of shoot before. He knew how to handle long exposures and nightlight. He took a series of frames, slowly lifting his angle from the base of the beams to the top, where they disappeared into the clouds. Only later, sorting through the images on his monitor at home, did one frame stop him. At the top of one beam, at the point where the light met the cloud cover, there was a shape that existed in that frame and no other. A tall, luminous figure, clearly outlined against the surrounding sky, with a defined head and shoulders, and what Rich described as arms folded across the chest. He had not used editing software. He had a full sequence of frames from that night, and the shape appeared in exactly one of them, at the exact position where the light touched the clouds. Rich shared the photograph, and the responses from families who had lost loved ones in the attacks defined how the image travelled. A mother who had lost 2 children in the collapse wrote that she saw the Lord standing guard over the memorial. She did not need anyone to confirm the image for her. The photograph gave her something the years of official memorials had not: the feeling that the people she lost were being watched over by something larger than grief. Critics noted that clouds illuminated from below by powerful beams regularly produce human-like shapes, and that a single anomalous frame in a long exposure shoot is more likely a fleeting cloud formation than a supernatural visitation. Both readings are reasonable. What is not reasonable is expecting a photograph like this to settle anything, because the people who need it to be real and the people who need it to be explainable are asking entirely different questions. The New York figure appeared in artificial light above a city still processing loss. In Colombia, during the hardest weeks of a global pandemic, it appeared on something far older and far more alive, a tree in a locked-down street where people had nowhere else to turn. Number 4. The Tree in Lockdown, Magange, Colombia, 2020. It was early April 2020, the first Easter of the pandemic, and the streets of Magange in northern Colombia were supposed to be empty. The country was under strict stay-at-home orders, shops were closed, work had stopped. Families who had been living paycheck to paycheck for years were now doing so while a virus spread through the city, and nobody could say when it would end. Then someone stepped outside and looked at the ceiba tree on their street. The tree was enormous, with a broad trunk and branches that stretched out symmetrically on both sides. That afternoon, the light was hitting the bark in a way that hadn't been noticeable before, and in that specific light, the grain and shadow of the wood seemed to form a figure, a torso, arms extended along the width of the branches, a head near the top of the trunk with the silhouette of a man on a cross so clear that the first person who saw it stood there alone for a long moment before calling anyone else over. Word moved through the locked-down neighborhood faster than any official announcement could. Families came out of their homes carrying candles. People who had not been able to enter a church in weeks began to pray openly under that tree, singing, weeping, placing their hands on the bark. They asked for healing. They asked for protection from something none of them could see or fight. The moment had exactly the quality of early Christianity. Ordinary people gathered around something inexplicable in public without permission. The problem was the pandemic itself. Police arrived and tried to disperse the crowd, reminding them that gatherings of any kind were illegal. Most of the crowd was slow to leave. For them, the instruction to go back inside and close the door directly conflicted with what they believed they were looking at. Some stayed until dark. The tree became, for those weeks, a destination, a place people returned to, with candles, when the isolation became unmanageable. The authorities documented it. Nobody resolved it. In Colombia, people saw Christ in a living tree in the middle of a locked street. In Argentina, just weeks later, he appeared in the sky itself, photographed by a woman who happened to look up at the right moment. Number 3. He was in the light above the city, Jujuy, Argentina, 2019. Monica Aramayo was doing nothing more than living an ordinary day in San Salvador de Jujuy, a city set in a valley surrounded by the Andean foothills in northern Argentina, when she happened to look up. The sky had thick cloud cover, with the sun breaking through in concentrated beams, a specific atmospheric condition called crepuscular rays, where light appears to radiate from a single celestial point. Monica had seen skies like this before. What she had not seen was what the light was doing in this particular gap. In the break between the clouds, the concentrated brightness had gathered into a shape, not a general glow, a specific defined silhouette of a figure standing with arms wide open, the posture instantly recognizable to anyone raised on images of Christ, the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro, or classical cathedral paintings of the risen Christ. She had her phone in her hand. She photographed it before the clouds shifted. She shared the image online, saying she wanted to bless others with what she had seen. The photograph spread to dozens of countries within 24 hours. People pointed to what appeared to be a halo of light around the figure's head, the clear definition of the outstretched arms, and the way the brightness gathered at the center of the form as if illuminated from within. Many wrote that the image arrived at a moment of personal crisis and that seeing it changed them. Atmospheric scientists describe crepuscular rays as a purely optical phenomenon. In reality, the beams are parallel but appear to converge due to perspective, and cloud gaps can produce shapes that trigger the brain's face and body detection systems with startling precision. That explanation is accurate but incomplete, because it accounts for the physics and says nothing about why this particular shape appeared above this particular city and this particular light at the moment a woman happened to raise her phone. Monica's photograph showed a figure formed from light above the city. In Alabama, during a storm that had knocked out power and driven people inside, a woman filming from her porch captured something moving through the darkness overhead, something that only revealed itself when the footage was reviewed afterward. Number 2. Walking through the storm, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. A woman who goes by Solo Dolo on Facebook started a live video from her porch during a severe storm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The power had already gone out across her area. The wind was audible, and the sky was that particular dark grey of a storm at night, when the clouds themselves become the only light source. She was filming the damage around her, talking into the phone, narrating what the wind had knocked over, then turning the camera up to the sky. There was a thick wall of dark cloud with one brighter gap in the middle. She pointed at it and said, "Look at that hole right in the sky. That's who's got the power. He got us covered at least. We're all right."
Hey Lisa, how you doing? Look at that hole in that sky. That's who got the power right there.
In that moment, she was not making a specific claim. She was doing what people do in storms when the lights are out and the wind is loud, reaching for something steadying. She ended the live video and thought nothing more about it. Then a friend sent her a message telling her to look at the footage again. In the bright gap in the clouds, the hole she had pointed at and called God's, there was a dark shape moving. Frame by frame, it looked like a figure taking slow steps from one side of the opening to the other, with a defined head, a body and legs that appeared to lift and fall in sequence. She watched it several times. She posted the footage again and described what she was seeing. The clip was shared hundreds of thousands of times. Many viewers wrote that they saw a figure walking through the clouds, and that the sight of it during a storm, when they personally felt most exposed, was the most direct experience of God they had ever had from a phone screen. Others said it was simply a dark cloud drifting across a lighter patch. Both groups watched the same footage and arrived at different places because they brought different things to the screen. That gap between what is seen and what is believed has never been narrower than it is at the moment a person first watches that clip. The Alabama figure appeared and disappeared in a storm that passed in a matter of hours. The next appearance lasted over a decade, survived laboratory testing in 2 countries, and in 2025 was officially confirmed by the Vatican as a miracle. Number 1. The face that survived. Every test. Vilakanur, Kerala, India, 2013. On an ordinary morning in mid-November 2013, Father Thomas Pathikal was celebrating daily Mass at Christ the King Church in Vilakanur, a small hill village in Kerala, India. A few dozen parishioners sat in the pews. The service had followed its usual rhythm for years, in a parish where daily Mass was simply part of the day, unremarkable and necessary. When Father Thomas lifted the large host at the moment of consecration, he noticed a small, dark mark on its surface. He assumed it was a manufacturing imperfection. He continued. Then the mark began to change. As he held the host elevated, the dark spot expanded and clarified, brightening at its edges, deepening at its centre, until what was on the surface of the bread was no longer abstract. Father Thomas stared at the host for so long that the congregation grew concerned, some rising from their seats to see if he was unwell. He was not unwell. He was looking at what he believed was the face of Jesus Christ formed on the communion bread during Mass. After the service, he called others forward. They saw it too. Defined eyes, a nose, a mouth, a beard, the features rendered in a dark pigment with no obvious external source. The local archbishop was notified and instructed the parish to protect the host and make no public spectacle of it. The host was sent to a laboratory in Bangalore for scientific analysis, then to specialists in Rome. Both sets of tests returned the same result. The image was not painted. No ink, no glue, no applied material of any kind was detected. The face appeared to have formed from within the substance of the host itself. The host was occasionally returned to Villacanur for private veneration over the years that followed, and pilgrims from across India travelled to stand before it. The Vatican studied the case for over a decade. In 2025, church authorities in Rome announced that there was no obstacle to recognising it as a genuine Eucharistic miracle, making it India's first officially confirmed miracle of this kind in the modern church. Every other moment on this list has a counter-argument, a cognitive explanation, a lighting condition, a video artifact, a human tendency to find patterns in noise. This one has laboratory reports from 2 countries and a Vatican declaration. Whether you believe the face on that host appeared because of divine intervention, or because of something science has not yet named, what happened in that small church in Kerala has now been formally placed in a category that very few events in human history have ever occupied, the category of the unexplained, officially acknowledged and not dismissed. Thanks for watching. Now check out the videos appearing on screen for more compelling stories.